This is Paul Panic coming to you from Burn Knives, introducing to you the Bladeology podcast.
All right, we're going to jump into it like we do every week. Welcome to another episode of the Bladeology podcast. This is going to be episode 38 tonight. We are on with our original host lineup, and we do have a guest. This is the vocal representation of Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas.
Nick Chuprin of NCC Knives.
Elijah Malays of Asian Blade Works.
Great. And we are on tonight with Les Adams. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us tonight.
Thanks for the invite.
This is going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We've been talking. We've seen each other at some shows, and you make a very particular and a very cool carbon fiber knife, which I'm looking to get into the details tonight with you. So let's do it. So how did you get into knives? How did you get into knife making? When did it all begin?
Well, I think the best explanation of that was I went by a store one day that had a magazine rack, and it was the old Blade magazines, I guess. I'm not really sure what they were back then. It wasn't, it might have been Blade, or Knife Makers magazine or something, and I saw something on the front of it, and it just looked very enticing. And I went to a knife show, a local knife show in Miami where I lived, and saw it, and it was mesmerizing. It was just fascinating that people could do that with their hands, you know. And I said, let me give it a try. And I did. I invested in some equipment. I never really had any help. There was not anybody in the area really to mentor or anything at the time. And then I heard about the Knife Makers Guild. And they had a big show. They were doing a lot of the shows in Orlando. Now we're talking almost 30 years ago. And so I said, I'm going to run up there and see this. And I did, and I started looking at the knives and everything, and I started talking to some of the guild members, and they were very, very encouraging and helped me out. So one of them took me around and showed me some materials that would be good to start with, and I did. And I did that for about 2 years, I guess, and then took my work to one of the guild shows and went around to a number of the members. At that time, you would take your work to 4 different members, or at least 4 members that would inspect it and then sign off on your application, and that was the process. At that time, the guild had, probably between 300 and 400 members. At any rate, I got my signatures, and it was 2 years before I could even get a table as a probationary member. And finally did, and passed my probationary. And then you waited 3 years at doing shows. You did 3 years worth of shows, and then if your work was up to par, you were voted in as a voting member. And that's basically how I started with it. I was voted in as a voting member of the Guild in 1996, so I guess I'm coming up on about 25 years. So it's just a fantastic organization, just a great group of people that the knowledge base is phenomenal, and there's no shortage of giving, if you understand what I mean.
Oh, that's awesome. I've always hoped to hear things like that about the guild. So now you're saying that you brought your knife around to 4 guild members. Do you remember who those 4 members were by any chance?
That was 25 years ago.
It was
I know Bill DeFriest was one of them. Frank Centofonte was one of them, and a female that's since passed away. I don't remember her name. Steve Hill, I believe. I think Steve Hill signed off on my application. Buster Warinsky, he's passed away now. all those names are, they're Hall of Famers now. A lot of them, they're just tremendous people. And I guess the most important thing to me was they weren't condescending. They were very objective about the knives, constructive criticism that didn't beat you down, and that's what's good about the guild. The guys that come around that maybe have a problem with the grind one way or another, be glad to point it out to them without making you feel like, hey, you might as well give up. So that's what I tell everybody. I'm on the technical committee. I'm on the board now of the guild and in charge of membership, and I have a technical committee of four gentlemen, and when the probationary members or the voting members come through to have their work inspected, we're very objective with them, and they walk away with a good feeling, knowing that they can accomplish what they're there for.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So it was 25 years ago, and what were you doing full time for work at that time?
Well, that's a funny. I graduated from Penn State. Both my wife and I graduated from Penn State. I graduated with a pre-med degree. And at that time, it was almost impossible to get in med school unless it was the Vietnam era, and it was almost impossible to get in med school unless your father was a doctor or somebody donated a hospital wing, So it was rough. I had a pretty good background in geology. And when I left, I went to work. I went back to school and got what's known as a graduate degree from the Gemological Institute of America. If you're in the jewelry business, you understand that term. If you're not, it might be a little vague, but it's a rating. It's a certification that it would be comparable to in the jewelry industry to a law degree from Harvard. You could go just about anywhere. So I opened up. I started running some jewelry stores. I ran 3 different jewelry stores, and got really involved in that, in cutting stones and that type of thing, which I incorporated in some of the knife work. I did well enough to move the business down to Miami, Florida, and worked with a jewelry at a diamond house. And with that degree, one of the main things you do with Gemological Institute of America degree is you do a lot of appraisal work. And I started doing a lot of appraisal work for government agencies like the FBI on big jewelry heists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I met a lot of interesting people in law enforcement, and I was raised on the water a lot. My father had a large boat. They moved away, and I used it a lot. And anyway, I felt very comfortable on the water. I also hunted a whole lot, so I was comfortable around guns. And at this time in Miami, that was like 1979 or so. That's when all the drugs were coming in. You had government cut there, and it was just a highway for drugs coming across from the Bahamas and South America even. At any rate, I saw this ad in the paper that mentioned they needed auxiliary officers for the Florida Marine Patrol. And I said, that sounds like fun. So, yeah. So I went to the academy, got through the academy, started riding at night. I had a partner on the boats, and it was a hoot, boy. I tell you, you'd sit at the government cut and wait for the boats to come across. The customs would be there with the radar, and you'd pick a boat and go after it. And it just was very exciting. It was just, it just seemed like something I should do. And one day I told the wife, I said, guess what? I'm giving up the business and I'm going to go into law enforcement.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that go over?
Yeah, well, you can imagine. Just But I went with Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Department, and I started out on the road, and I was making knives all the time at that same time, and started out on the road, went into the detective bureau, and because of the training that I had done, and I had done a lot of competitive shooting, handgun shooting. And they had at this time they were transferring over to automatics from revolvers, and I was a certified firearms instructor, so I went to the range, and for about 8 or so years I was the range master, Miami-Dade County, which is the largest sheriff's department, east of the Mississippi, 3,300 sworn officers. I did that for a while. In the last about 14 years, because I had a lot of biology and physics and chemistry, and I had done some explosive work a little bit before I'd been went on the police department. So they transferred me to the bomb squad. So the last 14 years, I was on the bomb squad. Which was just a phenomenal experience in itself. I think probably about the best job in the world, I thought. And I did 25 years with the department and retired. And that's kind of the basis of my knives. Almost all of my knives are tactical in nature. And it was, I say this, I say these are true tactical knives that have that we've gone through and changed them as our needs are in the field. So that they incorporate a lot of things that some of the what I call, no offense, what I call kind of the pseudo tactical knives. I think, Jeremiah, you have a couple of them, and you've probably seen what I mean by that.
I do, yeah. Actually, I really have taken a liking to several features of both the flipper and the automatic. Actually, I think I appreciate their purpose and their designed purpose and function.
Well, I don't call them pretty knives by any means, and I do call them functional, like you just said. I use, and there's not too many people that are doing this. They're all carbon fiber, except for the blades, of course. They're all carbon fiber. And the problem I have is that I can't find carbon fiber that'll stand up to what I need it to. So I ended up making it myself. All those knives there are my own carbon fiber. The carbon fiber is the best I can find, but the binder, the epoxy, is the best epoxy. A lot of the epoxy that they're using on carbon fiber sheets that you might buy is just not quality enough. It's not got the PSI that these things need. So the only way I could do it, and I don't like doing it, but it's a necessity.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's right. So that's an attention to detail that that outfits, this tool, which is that, every piece of this is sort of made by you in-house. There's no outsourcing, which I do also appreciate.
And are you doing a cold press or a resin press?
This is the process that I use is pretty simple. I'll describe it to you, and anybody that might be listening, they're more than welcome to give me a call, and I'll go into further detail. The sheets are cut into a little over a square foot, and there's about 30 sheets in each one of them. Now I use a West Marine epoxy, a slow cure West Marine. The hardest epoxy that they have. And what happens is they're wetted out and put in a frame, and then the frame is put under about 12 ton of pressure. There's no heat involved other than the heat from the resin, which is mild, but it's a little over 12 ton of pressure. So you get very little. You get a lot of carbon fiber, very little resin, just enough to bond. But it's important because you get about zilch air. If you look at a lot of the store-bought, so to speak, carbon fiber sheets, and you look at them real close, you're most likely going to find air in them because they're not really put under. They're bagged, is what they are. They're vacuum bagged, so you don't get the density that you really need. There's a lot of people that badmouth carbon fiber. I don't know why. The strength to weight ratio is greater than steel, but a lot of them will badmouth it simply because they don't want to use it, and I don't blame them one bit. First off, it's expensive. It's probably one of the more expensive side materials for a knife that there is, but it's very dangerous to work with if you don't know what you're doing. And I encourage people, if they do, give me a call and let me tell you what I do for safety equipment. Is like a glass. And when it gets in your lungs, it stays in your lungs.
You're talking about when you're grinding it and milling it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I hate working with it. It's one of my favorite materials as well, but I hate working with it. Same thing. It's take every precaution, vacuum up the surfaces.
Please do. Who was that, Nick?
Yeah, I'm a knife maker myself, so I've a ton of experience with it. It's one of my most favorite materials prior to even making knives or collecting knives. It never gets old for me, but same thing. You work on it. I try to do it in batch work and vacuum the entire work area prior to and after. But I know it gets pretty itchy.
Yeah, it'll definitely get in your skin. It'll take you about a week to get out of it. So, I know one fellow that used Kyvex suits to work with it, and that's a good idea. That's a real good idea. I'm kind of lazy to do that.
But, so it's a pain in the ass putting on those suits. They're almost like sweatsuits. I have friends and family every time. It's like, dude, do you not wash your hands? I'm like, you don't get it. Like, I worked on carbon fiber 4 days ago. It's about a week before it really washes out fully.
Yeah. Nick's always in those Adidas sweatsuits anyway, so it's fine.
Now, now the process that I use on my knives, building the knives, is high tech and low tech, and that's kind of funny too. I'll tell you stories about that way back. High tech and low tech. When I got prior to getting into the bomb squad, or about the time I got into the bomb squad, we could not get a lot of the tools, the specialty tools that we needed, and we'd come up with ideas, and there wasn't anything out there. So I got involved in CNC, and I learned some programming. Mastercam was what I started with. And that's pretty well known program, but most of that was done only out of necessity from being in the bomb squad. As a matter of fact, I have a couple patents on items that we designed and would not been able to do it without CNC. And I started using that to cut my knives sides out with. So the accuracy is just phenomenal. The repeatability is phenomenal, and it's very satisfying to draw something, tool path it, and I'm sure you guys understand what I mean, to do that. So, and then when it comes to that point, then comes in a lot of the handwork. I CNC the outline of my blades, which again increases the accuracy, tenfold. But then they're all hand ground. On my baiters and what have you, belt sanders. Now the flippers, and I hate that term. What do you guys think about that? I hate that term, flipper. I think Jeremiah, you and I talked about that, didn't we?
I think we're over the. Yeah, I think the industry is not. It's not a great name. It's not an appealing name for a knife. It's not like an Orca or something.
If a flipper is designed right, you shouldn't have to flip it. And it's an engineering nightmare, but it's super satisfying when you finally get the spring tension versus the momentum to overcome that coefficient of friction to get that blade out without having to flip it. And that's a little tricky in itself, especially when you've got a knife with such a massive blade. I spent a lot of time figuring that one out. I also do something a little different on my knives. On that one, that the flipper, if you'll notice, the spring is embedded in the frame.
Yes,
We learn
I did see that. Yep.
Whether that knife is open or closed, that spring is still in that pocket. And the reason we did that, or I did that, is because of the terrible sandy, dirty environment we have down here. If you drop that in the sand, you're not going to get sand or debris in between the spring and the side of the knife, like most conventional liner locks have that gap where the spring locks into the blade. You can look right through it.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
In that one, it's completely sealed, whether it's opened or closed.
Which is actually, it's a very like novel idea, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's a simple solution for a problem that I'm surprised that more people haven't like come up with. Because it just sort of nests like that, and then it prevents debris essentially from entering the spring area. So I like it.
Well, in the bomb squad, we kind of have a motto, and I think all bomb squad people do, military or law enforcement. We use the KISS principle, okay? And that's that'll keep you from getting in trouble an awful lot of the times. Notice even the clip on both of those knives. The tip of that clip actually curves down, straight forward, or curves down a little bit. I don't know. I can't tell you the number of people who told me they've lost knives because the clip has caught on something.
Yeah, it pulls out of your pocket like that. It catches on something.
It's a little harder to get in your pocket, but it stays there. It doesn't have near the tendency to reach out with that curl up on the clip to grab things as you slide by something. So it's a ball bearing system. I use the steel in all my knives. I use 154 CPM 154. It's funny in the knife industry. I call it, as far as steel is concerned, I call it the knife of the steel of the week industry. You know, every time you turn around, there's another steel out there that's greater and better than the one before.
They certainly do change it up a lot, don't they? Yep.
Yeah, a little bit more of this magnesium or a little bit more zirconium or who knows what, but it all goes back. I mean, ATS 34 and CPM 154, pretty much the same. And I think people would still be using ATS 34 if the Japanese hadn't stopped making it. But a tried and true steel, holds a good edge, has a good, the beauty of it too is it's a simple heat treat. Well, I do all my own heat treating, as most of us are getting more into that. The ovens are so good and they're affordable now and reliable. So a lot of people are doing their own heat treat, and it's in the convenience of it also. You do one blade for somebody or you do 20 blades. Who cares? You've got the oven right there. So it makes for good.
It's funny. We were just we were talking with a knife maker. We were talking to Rainey Valentin a couple weeks ago, and he was
yeah.
Also,
I caught that.
Yeah. He was same thing. He was like he had an appreciation for ATS 34 and the realm of steels that used to be that's just what everybody used. It was fine. It worked great, and it was straightforward. It was there are other steels, but really for user steels, the same thing still applies. Easy to sharpen, easy to work with, easy to heat treat, right? Finishes well. That's it. Like you do get a lot of more modern companies trying to spice it up with your S90Vs, and I don't know that those knives ever see the kind of use that those steels are designed for. But we'll leave that for another time. Tell me a little bit about. Okay, so we brazed over the CNC aspect. About what year do you think, within reason, did you start getting into the CNC with the Bomb Squad?
Well, there were different tools that we knew that would be effective on entering packages or just general bomb work, and they weren't out there on the market. And so with the ability to draw with these drawing programs and being able to transfer that into a G code and actually cut that part out right in front of you, it's amazing. Excuse me. And there were several different tools that we did. We did a lot, matter of fact. And the same tools are used all over the industry now. Different shock tube initiators. I know I'm going into things that a lot of people might not understand, but anyway, ignition type tools, entry type tools that were just a daily use that you couldn't buy. But the CNC, the first CNC that we worked on, I designed myself. The department didn't want to buy it, so I designed and built it myself, and it was actually very simple to do. And there are a number of other guild members that have taken it up. There's several quality CNC machines out there for knife making that are under $3,000. Which, if you're a full-time maker, you can make that back in no time, just from the saving the time and the accuracy, repeatability of it. It's funny. I started using CNC. I'm proud of it now, but I'll tell you a funny story. 15 or so years ago, I would have never wanted anybody in the guild to know that I did that. It would be taboo, with the handmade attitude of knife-making organizations at the time. I mean, the guild went through. I'm 68 years old, so I remember a lot of what happened, 25, 30 years ago back during the guild's heyday, when there were 300 or 400, and at the meetings. Some of those guild meetings they were knock down, drag out. I remember one time where we had to pull two guys apart, and it was all over how knives were being made and if they were actually handmade or if they were used modern machining techniques. And one of the biggest incidents of two, and I'm not gonna name them. One of them has passed away, and one of them, I will say this, is known as the father of tactical knives. So I'll let you figure that out. I don't want to get any trouble or anything, but there was, in my opinion, probably, arguably the not only the father, but still produces one of the best tactical knives out there. At any rate, he was accused of doing something that 90% of the knife makers today do, and it was a knockdown, drag-out fight, and it was water jetting.
Right, I was going to say.
Simple as water jetting. And now, I know some makers that got their own water jet systems, So how times change, man, it's funny.
You start looking at different collectors. For example, I make folders, what you'd call quote-unquote tactical folders, and I use CNC machinery in-house. It's just looked at different. There's collectors these days that actually prefer makers that use CNC machines because there's better tolerances, more repeatability, and more reliable, accurate products. Not to say that there aren't non-reliable, accurate products without CNC. I did it for 5 years prior to getting my first one. It's a different thing. It's a different skill set. It's a different finished result. Same thing, water jet, and water just almost nothing. You're just cutting out parts and saving yourself using a bandsaw. Yeah. There's still tons of work to be done after that. But I'm familiar with the guild members that take a lot of that stuff very personally.
Yeah, I know. It's like, hey, you're not making a handmade knife if you're using modern technology. I think I use CNC on the parts that I do use CNC because it's just so satisfying to draw it, design it right in front of you on the computer, and then tool path it, and then send it to a machine and watch your work just be transformed right before your eyes. It's just very, very enjoyable.
And I probably get more joy out of that than doing it by hand for some reason. I don't know, because I get to play with a robot, but I don't know, just working with the hands, figuring out slowly. You got the skill set. You'll figure it out. You'll get it done. But plugging it into a robot and then like walking away and coming back, and you have a part that like this is what you meant to have, and it works, and it's there, and you still don't really fully understand it, but it's there and it works, and I don't know. It's a little bit more sasatisfying, unless I'm doing something really crazy manually. But just to make a plain tactical knife, at this point it's kind of the same thing over and over until you make something like crazy. Yeah. But CNC is definitely a lot more satisfying and a lot funner to do, in my opinion. Like I said, I've done both. I did about 4 or 5 years prior to CNC, and then the last 4 years with the CNC, to the point to where yesterday I managed to buy my second machine.
Oh, cool. I know some guild members that have told me that if they couldn't use CNC, they'd probably give up knife making.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty straightforward.
That's pretty straightforward. That's about as solid as you can get.
So now, Les, where did you first run into carbon fiber? Was that something that was always sort of on your radar, or did you see it somewhere? How did you?
It's a good question. A good question. And again, that came from the true tactical sense. The bomb suit weighs about 90 pounds, okay? And down here in Florida, when it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity, I would not let any of my guys stay in that bomb suit more than 20 minutes. Now, part of that is a weight factor. Like I said, the bomb suit weighs about 90 pounds. And the rule is every ounce counts. Every ounce you can knock off of the weight of you having to go down range in that bomb suit, carrying all that disruptive equipment with you, or an X-ray, a disruptor, all of these things you're carrying. You could be carrying 120 pounds without any trouble with you, the bomb suit, and all your equipment. So every ounce counts. And we all know carbon fiber is it might just be a knife, but it's the mentality of it. You do everything you can to cut that weight factor down, especially when carbon fiber, is reputably strength to steel ratio, or strength to weight ratio greater than steel. So that's a lot of it. It's that knife. I think that knife that you have there, both of them, Jeremiah, probably just weigh a little over 3 ounces.
And that's a full. That much, yeah.
That's a full time. That's a full-time tactical knife. A full-size tactical knife that only weighs a little over 3 ounces. So, it's that's probably why. I'm sure that's why I went to carbon fiber, looking for a material that would satisfy the strength and the weight that I wanted in a knife. It's got nothing to do. People go, "Oh, it's non-magnetic and everything." I go, "Hey, buddy, you got a steel blade in it. Of course, it's magnetic. Okay, whatever you want to think, but no, it's magnetic. It's just very lightweight and reliable. The automatic, if you'll notice." That's probably the only knife in the world that has a learning curve other than a balisong. I'm sure you went through operating the safety. I think it's the only knife out there that actually the safety is always in the on position unless that blade is actually coming out. And therein was a problem we had with other automatics. Automatics will open up in your pocket without any trouble at all. All you have to do is have your keys or coins or something, push those buttons. And you stand a chance of putting your hand down in your pants pocket or something, or if it's got a clip on it, opening it up. And you don't want to fall on something like that. You sure don't want to cut your hand trying to get your knife out when you're going down range on a pipe bomb. That's why I designed the safety in that. And that's why I designed that particular type of safety. The spring in that automatic is about a third or 50% stronger than any automatic spring out there. I've had some people at my tables at shows that the knife has flown completely out of their hand when they've opened it because they're not holding on to it tight. As a matter of fact, there's some people I won't sell that knife to.
Right.
Just
no, it fires nice and hard. It pleasingly
it's got to
snaps out.
It's got to open. It cannot not open.
Right.
It's just that's the key to it. And when it opens, it better stay open.
Exactly.
And when it closes, it better stay closed.
No, the AOS safety, the always on safety, I definitely I mean there is a tactical advantage and logical design behind having a safety that you have to disengage the safety to fire it and then disengage the safety to close the knife.
You gotta
that's it.
You have to. There is a disadvantage to that knife. It's like a 45 automatic. It's probably the worst sight-on for any law enforcement person to carry because you got to do two things. You got to take the safety off to fire it. There's a two-step motion. It's a dinosaur as far as a self-defense gun. Well, that knife might fall in a little bit into that too. You have to do two things. But most people, when they get the hang of it, it's a one movement.
It's fluid.
Fluid. Exactly. Thank you. That's a perfect connotation. So you get used to it. But I think the safety factor is far outpasses the learning curve that it takes to get used to it.
And it's very so right, like you said, these knives are unabashedly straightforward. They're not cosmetically trimmed or anything. They are tools that are meant to be used. And I think you were saying that or the note you sent me, so the safety on the automatic, it's not overly chamfered and slick and smooth because it's meant to be used with gloves on if you were in a bomb suit. It's a tool that's meant to be used, in a specific arena.
A lot of these ideas weren't from me. Okay, I'm not going to take credit for a lot of these things. I'll run by a couple of them on the automatic in particular. I sell a good amount of these to two particular law enforcement agencies or government agencies. And that were involved with me on the bomb squad on a daily basis. And they'd come back to me and say, hey, you might think about this, you might think about that. And I say, yeah, that's a good idea. One of the things I don't do on that knife, you mentioned the safety, chamfering the safety. I could round that front of that safety off, make it pretty, I could even checker, or put line grooves on it, whatever, and everything. And it'd be defeating what it really is designed. I want that little edge up front because you got to realize all of my guys are wearing gloves. And the smoother something is, the harder it is to operate. So you want that little sharp edge to make sure that they have something to grip on. That's one reason why I don't put a chamfer. All I do is break the edges around that. I could put a 16th inch or whatever radius all the way around that knife on both sides, and that would be pretty, but it would not fit. It wouldn't grip in your hand. It wouldn't cut into your hand with gloves on and stay there when you're all hot and sweaty. So that's the reason for that. I've had people buy them, and go, hey, you ought to do this, that, and the other. And I tell them, hey, it's your knife, son. You can take it home and do whatever you want to with it. But yeah.
I realized I was watching a video of yours, and you don't make the safeties out of carbon fiber. You actually mold them out of plastic that you mentioned using for bowling balls. I think.
Yeah, that was another idea, and I'm going to be honest with you. I guess this is as public as again. I'm going to start making the safeties out of carbon fiber. The bowling ball material, ebonite or whatever, is good. It's tough, but I think the carbon fiber, in reality, and again, I'll admit, in reality, it's easier for me to make them out of carbon fiber than it is to cast them out of the ebonite. And I think the carbon fiber might be a little stronger. And Jeremiah, you can send that back, and I'll retrofit it, and you see what you think.
All right.
And I'll even pay the postage.
There we go.
But I think I will start doing that out of carbon fiber. Sometimes if you want to sell these knives, you got to conform to what some people want, and whether you like it or not. If it works, okay, fine. If it doesn't work, I won't do it. But and they work, the Ebonite's fine, but I think I like the carbon fiber a little bit better.
The reason I asked was for the mech of it. I was wondering if it was just for ease or how it was done, or there was a very unique shape that was easier to mold over machining. Was the reason I asked.
It's I've made molds out of them, and it's a nasty, mixing epoxy, injecting it in a mold, and it's just. I think that I'd just rather do it with carbon fiber. I can mill those out without any trouble, and that's probably what I'll go to.
There you go. All
everything's in a state of transition to try to improve.
Right. You mentioned something else there, which is so you go to the when did you let's I want to transfer a little bit into shows. You go to the gathering pretty regularly. When did you start going to the gathering?
I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. So you go to the gathering, and there's a very specific number of these knives you bring, and you sell out in pretty much moments every time. So much so that I was never even able to handle one of these knives because every time I came to your table, they were gone. So I mean, which is great, which is very good.
I bring about 12 of those flippers and 12 of the automatics to the show, and yeah, and I price them very fairly. I don't want to get into my pricing thing, I price them very fairly, and I give. Okay, I'll tell you what I do. It's not a secret. I'm a full-time hobbyist. Okay, I don't need this money as an income, and I really, especially right now, I really feel for the guys that are full-time makers out there that with this not being able to go to the shows and everything that are struggling, and we ought to really think about them, and folks like you that have the shops and everything, that you're doing a great job. You're keeping food on the table for them. I'm sure you realize that. But in my case, these knives are labors of love. I really truly enjoy doing them. And when I go to the shows are more vacations for me. I get out of town. I see my friends, especially at the Blade. I see people that I only see once a year that have helped me, and I've helped them, and we exchange ideas and that type of thing. So it's a social thing. Basically, what I try to do is I take the cost of the show. In other words, the gathering is a pretty expensive show to go to. The tables are expensive. It's worth it, but they are expensive. The plane fare out there is expensive. The hotel is very expensive. And we all know what the food is and everything. So you get into thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a show. And you guys know that as well as anybody, especially having a shop out there. So what I do is I try to take the total cost of the show. Excuse me. I try to take the total cost of the show and the number of knives that I'll be bringing, and I divide that up, and that's pretty much how I price the knives.
There you go.
So, and if you get there soon enough, yeah, you're going to get the deal of a lifetime. You're going to get a knife that is one nobody really wants to make because of the carbon fiber. It's in reality, there are very few carbon fiber knives out there compared in a comparative situation. So I'm not patting myself on the back or anything, but I bring about 24 of those to each show, and I've sold out every show for the last 15 years.
Which is no, that's good.
So it's a. But then again, I love people, and when you walk by my table, one thing I do at the shows. The guys ask me, they go, Les, you sell out at every show. How do you do that, And I said, well, first off, if you want to sell knives, you're going to have to follow 3 rules. And if you're new at knife making and going to shows, these are 3 good rules. If you follow, you're going to do fine. First off, you've got to have a knife that everybody wants. In other words, right now, tacticals are very popular, and they're always going to be popular. They go up, they go down, but they will always be popular. Second, you've got to have a knife that's unique. If it's not unique, it's on the table next to you and the table next to them all the way down, okay? Nothing special. It's like, I remember going to some of the first shows, and every table you went to had nothing but drop point hunters on them. One after another after another. And I go, and the guy says, I didn't sell the damn knife. He said, I said, well, the guy next to you did, because he's got the same knife and it's $10 less. So that brings you to the next point. You got to have a knife that everybody wants. You got to have some uniqueness in it that makes it different than everybody else. And you've got to have it priced where it's a fair price. When that person walks away, they go, wow, I got a good deal. So if people will follow those rules, they're going to do great at any show they go to. Have you been to shows and you see people, you walk by their table and they're sitting on their ass and they don't even look up at you?
Yeah,
Now how's that guy going to sell a knife, It's kind of like in your store on the strip. If somebody walks in the shop and this guy's just sitting there doing a crossword puzzle, how many knives do you think you're going to sell?
Yeah, you got to be interactive.
You've got to, and you see these guys, they sit there. If you come by my table, I'm going to be standing up that whole show. After the show's over, I'm dead. I am dead. I can hardly walk. My feet are killing me. My back's killing me. I don't have any knives left, though. If somebody comes by the table and I catch their eye, my hand is going to go out and say, hey, my name's Les. How you doing? So if they would just try to do that, there would be nobody in these shows going home, oh, man, it's a lousy show. I didn't sell a thing. Yeah. I hate when I hear that. I really do.
I mean, you've got to be, if you're at a table at a show, you got to be personable and you got to be willing to talk to folks that are walking by and friendly, because you know what, there's unanswered questions and opportunities to inform, a friend or a potential customer about your product, in this case being knives.
Jeremiah, nothing could be truer. Nothing could be truer. I'll tell you a story. When I was first in the guild, I was at a table in between Bill DeFriest and Frank Sinofani. Now, Frank Sinofani used to be a police officer. We got along real well. And Bill DeFriest, he was a big hunter and made beautiful knives. And one day, a guy comes down, and he's Italian. Had a big, and the name I embarrassingly I forget, but had a beautiful shop in Italy, very sophisticated individual, whole family. And they bought a lot of knives. And he came down, he walked down, and the guy's walking down the aisle, and Bill looks at me and he says, stand up. This he's a buyer, okay? And you look down the aisle, and everybody was just talking amongst themselves, and this guy, was going down, and he'd stop and he'd look at something, and they wouldn't give him the time of day or anything. And he got to Bill's table, and Bill was already up, and his hand was out, shaking his hand, how you doing, and everything. And the guy looked at his wife and looked at his son, who could speak English, and they started talking back and forth. And the guy said, through his son, he says, how much? And Bill said, what do you mean, how much? And the guy says, how much for the whole table?
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
And the guy bought the whole table, only because probably he had quality work, without a doubt. I mean, super stuff, but because the guy treated him with respect.
Sure.
So simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you never... And that's true with the shop too. We see that a lot.
Oh, definitely.
You never know who's going to walk through the door. You can't judge somebody by how they dress or how they talk. People will surprise you. If you open up and are friendly to somebody and just talk about knives, talk about whatever, people are really, they'll blow your minds. I mean, they'll walk in and spend a lot, or you never know. They could be a good friend or a good acquaintance from that point on, but. in this business especially, you never know who's walking down the aisles at a knife show. It could be a millionaire dressed in everyday clothes, just
I've
just
had
hanging out.
I've had two instances. One was pretty recent, but one was about 12 or 15 years ago, and I was there, and a guy wanders by, and he looked like death warmed over. Okay, he really did. And it's the kind of guy that this guy doesn't have a nickel. He's just in here, who knows why, but he's and everything. And I stopped him. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I mean, that was back when I was a little desperate. I need to sell knives. and he says, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And everything. And I said, "My name's Les Adams," and he stuck out his hand, and everything. He says, "My name is John. I think it was John Reese." I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "How are you doing today?" "Fine." I said, "Where are you from?" He says, "Hershey, Pennsylvania." You getting the big picture?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I said, "You're kidding? You're not the?" "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I invented Reese's peanut butter cup." And he bought 2 or 3 knives. He had 7 sons, and he bought some knives from them, and everything. And people on both sides of me are going, "Man, I never thought this guy would buy anything." Just a few years ago, when we were in Kansas City, Mr. Brownell's from Brownell's gunsmithing supply came by, and again. And nobody's giving him the time of day, and he's probably got a wallet as thick as a brick, Don't go to the shows if you don't like people.
That's exactly right.
I can't figure it out. You go there, you spend $700 for a table, and you don't work the table.
Yeah.
Hey, let's put it this way: I hate people, but I make it look like I like people at shows.
Yeah, well,
when I got to be socially interactive, I make it work.
Sometimes you got to put a little show on, sometimes it's hard too, and all you guys have seen this. You get these people in the knife shows that are the loneliest people in the world, and they come up to your table and they will sit there for 2 hours and talk to you.
You gave them the time of day, and they're.
Sometimes you just gotta. Hey, excuse me just a second, but
yeah, but it happens. These guys show up to these shows, they're nervous, they're new to the community, they hear about the knife show, they show up, they don't know who to hang out with. At the table, it's not bad, because at the table, from when the show opens up at 9 o'clock to 6 p.m., like you're in your work zone. You got the work personality on, you're socially interactive. After 6 o'clock, you want to hang out with your friends and it's Vegas or late show. You want to get drunk, you want to relax, and do it again the next day. And at that point, when these guys are like, "Oh, he was a nice guy to me, I'm going to hang out around him from 6 o'clock to whenever," and that's when you kind of want to hang out with your friends that you see the 3 times a year at shows.
Sure, exactly.
You don't want to put on that work personality.
It's when they buy a table and then they want to come back behind and sit with you for the rest of the day.
Oh boy. All right. Yeah. Gotta draw that line somewhere, That's gets a little tricky. But that's all part of the experience. That's part of putting on that personality for the show, in both ways, as a salesman and as a social, auteur, so to say.
Personality, sure.
Exactly.
You bet.
So the automatic and the flipper, the automatic has the always on safety with the push button, and it's a coil fired automatic. Let's get into a little bit of the details on that one.
Okay.
How did that come about? How did you develop this this always on safety? Now, was there an incarnation of this knife previously? It was just a push button without the safety. Let's do that a little bit.
Well, it did start out with a push button without the safety, but again, going back to being a true tactical knife, you'll notice how high that button sits up. Now, you really can't have a true tactical automatic unless that button sits high up, because once again, if they try to make the automatic safe with a button, a large button, they have to embed it, indent it into the frame. In other words, make it flush or a little bit under the frame so it doesn't accidentally get pushed. Well, try doing that with Nomex gloves on, okay? So that's just not going to work. Didn't work for me. So that's how the button and the large button came about. And I knew that I would have to have some kind of safety in it. Well, when I was at the range at the police department, I was also the departmental armor. And the department in Miami-Dade County is a huge department and a lot of funding. And they sent me to every single armory school out there. And a tremendous amount of guns on the market have what's called a cross-bolt safety. Are you familiar with that term? A cross-bolt safety is very popular with, very popular with shotguns. In other words, if you have a shotgun, you'll have a little button on each side of the trigger. And what happens is when you put that safety on, it pushes that cylinder of metal so that if you were to pull the trigger, it would not pass enough to set to break the sear. So that's called a cross-bolt safety. And I figured that, that might work on that automatic if I could design in a system that actually stops the button, or in this case, we call it the trigger, from being pulled. So when you push that safety, or when that spring pushes that safety forward in the opened or closed position, what it's doing is sliding a piece of metal or the ebonite so that the button cannot go far enough down for the blade to engage.
Okay, so it totally interrupts the travel of the hat, so it cannot go through. It cannot.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's funny. The only problems that I've ever had with that knife are people taking it apart to try to figure out how it works.
Yeah, there's those out there that will do that. That's true.
And, I get the knife. That's only happened a few times, but I get the knife back. And if they just tell me, look, I was just curious how it was working and everything, and I took it apart, and now I can't get it back together. Okay, fine, no problem. Send it to me. I'll take care of it for you. But you get all kind of stories, like, hey, all the screws came loose at once in it. You got, yeah, okay. You don't call anybody a liar, but you do get a good laugh out of it.
Right. Yeah. I opened the box. I fired it once, and the whole thing just kind of like fell apart. Like,
yeah,
sure
exactly.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sure that down the road or sooner or later, I've had them out for, over 10 years, but no problems. But it's a knife, and a knife. What people don't understand, people come up to me at the table, especially, and I'll tell you this, especially ladies, buying a knife for their husband or their son or somebody in the military, something like that. And one of the questions they'll ask me is, does this knife have a lifetime guarantee? And I tell them, absolutely not. I said, a knife's one of the most abused tools on the face of the earth. Now, if it's something I did wrong, yeah, sure, you bet, no questions asked. But if you take it out and decide to use it as a screwdriver, I'm probably going to charge you for a new blade.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's reasonable. It's warranty against misuse. That's like not my problem.
Well,
I
you got a lot
as long as I'm alive, I'll warranty it. But you got about a year, so better use that thing fast.
I'll tell you a story. Living down here in Florida and everything, I used to make fillet knives. I used to love to make fillet knives, and not too many people make them because they're hard. It's a long, narrow grind on a thin piece of steel. Yeah, and they're hard to do, and they're hard to heat treat right too. By the way, and you guys know that. And but I quit making them simply because they got to be the most abused knife on the face of the earth. I mean, people are hammering them through kingfish backbones, and cutting everything on the boat that they shouldn't be cutting. And I quit making them. I just said, no, this is not worth it,
Yeah, they probably do get housed pretty good.
I made more of a home version of a fillet knife. After you caught the fish, you did it at home, but I just didn't like grinding them because when you're grinding the tip area, like the tip is parallel with the grinder, but your hand is 45 degrees out because the 8 inches out, the whole thing is flexing.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't think about that.
Any more I go to Pro Bass and buy an $8 one, because I'm going to drop it overboard anyway. So
there you go. Yeah,
I was actually making back in the day when I first started. I was making titanium ones with cork handles. My idea was, it'll never rust and it'll float.
Yeah. That's why they paint. That's why they paint them red now, so you can see them when you drop them in the water.
Oh, that makes sense, actually. Yeah. I mean, if you were gonna, fillet knives. No, I don't know about that. Better to.
Yeah, Jared. This is before you met me. This is when I was making kitchen knives and fillet knives and fixed blades and bushcraft stuff.
So, Les, you basically, and now correct me if I'm wrong, were you living in and working in Miami Vice? Is that essentially is that accurate? Were you
when I was with the Marine Patrol, our total job was interdiction. Okay. I mean, you talk about people that have take-home vehicles. My take-home vehicle was a 28-foot cigarette with twin 455 blown Chevys in it. Okay, that boat would do on a calm day, on a nice day, that boat would do an easy 110 mile an hour on the water. So those were all confiscated boats. That's where we got them: airplanes, boats, everything. But that was my take-home vehicle. So that was. I guess you can understand why I got into law enforcement.
Yeah, right. If they're gonna, those are some pretty good fringe benefits there.
Well, and I found it. The jewelry business was good, but I just didn't find it socially redeeming. It just didn't. At the end of the day, it just didn't seem like, what have you really done? It was, you understand what I mean.
Sure. Now, do you do any sort of jewelry stuff anymore? I mean, I'm sure you could still spot a stone.
I really enjoyed the manufacturing of it. I did a lot of lost wax work. I still have all my casting equipment, my burnout ovens and my centrifugal casters and torch and everything. But I just, I really haven't had time to with everything else. When you retire, people say you got to have a lot of time. I'm busier now than I've ever been. I haven't gotten back into it. I really did enjoy it when it was, but there's just not enough hours in the day sometimes.
Right. No, that's true. You gotta focus on what's up front, which in this case is the knives.
Well, a lot of times it's fishing too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that works. So you must still get out on the water pretty regularly then.
Yeah, I'm down on the water down here. I've got a nice boat in the back, and we go out into the flats down here in the backwater, and sometimes outside. But just beautiful country down here, just beautiful.
Now, have you ever done the Gator Show down there?
That's a funny story. I don't even know if I should say anything like this or not. But yeah, the Gator and the Florida Knife Makers Guild. Which I'm gonna, now that I'm retired, gonna get back into. I was in the Florida Knife Makers Guild for some times, and then the work just wouldn't let me go to the shows or anything, and so I missed about 5 years of the Florida Knife Makers Guild shows, and I wanted to get back into it, so I went to the president at the time. I think he's passed away now. I went to the president at the time, and he says, Yeah, but you got to pay 5 years of back dues. And I'm going, I don't think so. Okay. Now, the Gator Show is probably the bigger show in Florida. A lot of nice people. A great bunch of guys. And I think I would have done that this year, but everything got canceled with the virus. So. And it's not too far from me, 3 or so hour drive. That's nothing. And a lot of nice people, real nice people, top quality.
Yeah. Definitely. A few people we talked to. That's definitely in that neck of the woods. That seems to be a pretty prominent show. I've got to try to make it down there one of these years for that show when it's not canceled.
Yeah.
Is like I'm confused. Is it a knife show or is it a gator show?
No, they
Literally.
just.
Yeah, it's just a knife show. No alligators allowed. But,
Well,
it's
it's
the
Florida.
gator-
There's always
gator
alligators
club.
within eye span.
I mean, you're in Florida. You never know. You got to be prepared, Nick. That's why you got to have
Well,
a good
it's
knife on you.
it's alligator season right now. You get to pull a permit and go hunt them. It's quite a trip to go out and into the canals or the swamps, Everglades, and some of the bigger lakes. Lake Okeechobee is full of them. They're running all over the place, and they're delicious eating. The meat's fantastic.
Yeah, I've actually had it a few times when I'm down there, and it's good. It's all about the sauce. It's like the white-tailed deer of the peninsula, I guess. Something like that. But yeah, no, going through Alligator Alley through the Everglades there. It's a pretty wild part of the country, actually.
Well, if you go through Alligator Alley, I'll guarantee you'll see alligators on boats coming and going. They're all over the place. All over the place.
Oh yeah. So you were okay. So we were saying that you mostly do the USN. You do Blade Show too?
Always do the Blade Show.
Always do the Blade Show. How long have you been doing a Blade Show?
Oh gosh, I stopped doing it for a little while again because of work, but I've done the Blade Show the last 4 or 5 years, I think.
Nice. Okay. All right. Yeah, that seems to be if you don't show up at Blade Show, everybody thinks that something happened.
Well, it's the show of the world, so.
Right.
And it's got some other advantages of it too. A lot of us makers, Nick, he understands, and all you guys do. I mean, there are a lot of people go to the Blade Show just to buy supplies, especially if you're from
most of my supplies at Blade Show. Any of the fancy materials and natural materials, I kind of like to pick it out in person.
Sure. And think if you're out of country, we get a tremendous amount of people out of country, then it's a gold mine to them. So Blade's got a lot of benefits, I'm sorry they had to cancel, but again, Evelyn, I guess it is, made a good choice. It would have been a nightmare, I think.
Yeah, certainly some of the logistics involved with regulations and things being what they are now might be a little more complicated than that group might have really been ready to undertake, along with the customer bases. Obviously, that's a big ask for a convention of that size, So we'll do that. We'll do that in 2021. That's fine. And the same thing with USN. We'll move our Vegas plans to next year, which it's just next year. It'll keep on trekking, so to say.
Exactly.
Oh,
all these shows are going to come back. There's no doubt about it. Now, one thing that I did see, and I'm sure you guys saw too, which is interesting. I've started to see a few online knife shows.
I did see that. A couple of makers went live or put their work up on their Facebooks or on their Instagrams.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the internet is probably the one thing that has hurt knife organizations and shows. People, they don't have to go to a show to buy where they used to. So it has had an effect on shows, no doubt about it.
Right. No, exactly.
I bet you guys are doing a tremendous mail order with this pandemic thing.
Yeah. I mean, sales at the shop have actually been not terrible. I mean, obviously in-store sales are a little down, but online sales have been trucking right along because, people sort of, they're at home, they're in front of the computer, and collectors never stop, collecting the good stuff. So,
top quality mail order brides.
Yep, that's right. All
People
the
that
time.
buy knives are going to buy knives one way or the other.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
they're
a
either
good
going to
point.
buy them at the show or they're going to buy them. I mean, it's an addiction to some people. Thank goodness.
Right.
But they're going to buy knives.
No matter
Whether,
what.
like that's exactly right.
Yeah. No, that's true. So all right, so Les, we've got the bow styles. Let's see, we went over some of the mechanics. And another note that I wanted to go over that I don't remember if we did or not yet, but the pocket clips. So the securement of the pocket clip is milled into the carbon fiber, so it sits beneath the face of the carbon fiber, which I also find rather pleasing. So there's not a bunch of sort of hardware sticking above.
Another complaint that you get from knives is that they need to be as streamlined as possible. And I'm not going to take a clip and just slap it on top of the side of a knife, and have the edges catch it and that type of thing. That's not what I call guild craftsmanship there. Okay. That's just a shortcut is basically what that is. So yeah, the clip is embedded into the carbon fiber frame, but it's also screwed in. Every screw in that knife gets screwed into steel. It gets screwed into stainless steel. There is a sleeve, a threaded sleeve that connects those two sides that all the screws screw into. Carbon fiber's tough, but it will not hold up to threads, okay? If you thread a piece of carbon fiber and just put a screw into it, it's just not going to work for you on a long-term basis. It's got to screw into steel.
Right. Metal's got to meet metal on that to make a proper securement.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
Dang it. That's awesome. That's very cool. So what does the future hold? Where does I mean, you're in this. You're doing it now, and you're fulfilling orders now. Do you have an NSN for this? Is that right?
No, you don't have to. You don't really have to. When I was in law enforcement, I never even worried about it. But there are definitely federal regulations that we're trying our hardest to get rid of. The knife reader and the knife rights group, we should all donate to that. But he's doing whatever he can. The political climate right now is the last thing politicians are concerned about is avoiding the federal switchblade laws. But at any rate, I think the feds have a lot better things to do than worrying about enforcing switchblade laws. I'm very careful. And that I won't send a switchblade in the mail across state lines unless it follows the legal. The individual has proof that he's in the military or law enforcement, or the store is a dealer in automatics. So I stay pretty close to what the rules are, and it's a stupid law. I mean, we all know that, but it's still a law, unfortunately.
Right? Yeah, just one of those things.
Yeah. What does the future hold? I think the future holds not just for me, but I'll tell you a funny story too. In the guild now, we're starting to see. And and last year, I think, was really the first time that I started really seeing it. We're starting to see a lot more knives have you noticed the quality of the handmade knives out there? Especially in the folder range. They are just phenomenal. And I mean, I'd like to go down the list, but it wouldn't be fair. I'd forget somebody's name and there'd be hell to pay, But there are just some phenomenal lockbacks and that are just, I cannot believe human hands are making them, and they are. But they're also using a lot of high-tech equipment to do it. And it was funny. The last show we had in Fort Worth, the Guild show in Fort Worth, that Jerry Moen nice enough to put on for us. We had a probationary member with a lockback, and my technical committee, who they're going to find something. I don't like to use the word wrong. Okay, please don't mistake me for that. But they're going to find something that they feel should be improved on. Okay, that's a better way to put it. And any knife you bring to them, that's how good their eyes are. Okay. Harry Matthews and Charlie and Paul Lee Batard out of Mississippi is just phenomenal. Okay, just can critique a knife and help you out something fierce. All three of those guys on my committee can do that. At any rate, this one fella brought this one knife up, a folder, to be critiqued. And Harry looked at it, and Harry turns to me and he says, Les, I can't find a thing wrong with this knife. And I said, well, Harry, that's, and I talked to the fellow afterwards, and I said, Harry doesn't do this often, but he says he can't find it. He says, well, come here, let me show you this knife. And he says, here's a little problem I have with it. I'm not surprised, but he says, it's just not crisp enough on the lockback. And I said, well, what do you plan on doing? And he told me, he says, well, I'm going to have to tweak my CNC program a little bit. So that's the moral of the story. The work out
Harry
there.
had a heart attack.
It's just phenomenal work out there. But we can thank the high tech methods that are out there, and that's the wave of the future. We'll start seeing knives the makers that are hand making knives and 100%ers that are doing that. I get problems. As Les, these guys are going to kill us. And I said, no, they're not. You guys don't understand. There are people out there that want a handmade knife that's totally handmade. Okay, and there are people out there that want the perfection, so to speak, of a knife that is both CNC and handmade. And there are guild rules that demand that the blade has to be hand ground. So you're only gonna profit from anything. The bottom line, the moral of the story is competition is good for business.
I find that to be absolutely true. Yeah,
sure it is. Sure,
Keeps you on top of your game.
Yep. Yeah. So that's where it's going. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see phenomenal work, but it's going to be a combination of elaborate equipment. Even if you look out in some of the knife supply stores, you'll see gauges for setting the locks on lockbacks, okay, which you never had before. You had to do it by eye. But the technology is just advancing hand over foot, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely, competition's important, and you know what? It's I think Nick and I were talking about this, but like if the end game of knife making is to make the best darn knife you can make, as long as you're the one making it and producing it, whatever tools you use to make the best darn knife you can, I kind of think that's pretty important, whether it be handmade or CNC, whatever. But if you're making the best product you can make using the tools at hand, that's what counts,
Frank Sinofani told me one time, he says, don't make what the public wants, make what you want, and you'll always do a better product.
I'm thinking he's probably right.
Yeah.
I'm not one to disagree with Frank Senofonte. I'm not going to be that guy. That's not my place.
He was one of the best. He was one of the best folder makers when it was all done, 100% by hand, and you couldn't find a thing wrong with his knives. But that's when folders weren't near as popular, and there weren't as many people making them. But he was, and it was just a phenomenally clean, perfect knife. his claim to fame, and another thing that a lot of knife makers try to do is they try to embellish the knife, but they're not really capable of doing it. And nothing makes a knife look ugly than if you do file work that just stands out like a sore thumb. There's nothing prettier on a knife, especially a folder, than a brushed finish. Nothing prettier when it's done right. And when it isn't done right, it just turns that into something you can't even look at. So, I tell the new makers, don't try to be something that you're not.
Right. Yeah, keep within your abilities at the time of making, don't
exactly.
Right.
Keep practicing, it's like an engraver, they don't start out, doing work like Barry Hands does, so
that's true. Yeah. So now, Les, do you collect knives now, or are you just purely about making them?
I have never collected a knife in my life.
That's it. Okay.
Believe it or not.
That's
I just you know what, I've seen a lot of knives that, and I don't know how to put this tactfully, and I've seen a lot of knives that I'm not going to say I copied, but I got ideas from. I'll never copy another person's knife. Now the automatic, I get a lot of, hey Les, you think I can make that knife kind of like you did, and use your ideas and everything? I say, yeah, knock yourself out. Go for it. I don't patent anything like that. And if it gives somebody an idea, just like I got ideas from other people, go for it. Do it better than me, okay? Make me proud.
Right, yeah, there you go. Borrow that and then improve upon it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that's fair. I mean, the push button thing is certainly, it's pre-existing technology, but you put your spin on it, and you put that always on safety, which really, that changes the characteristics of that mechanism. I'd like to see somebody do something a little different, come up with a little bit better idea. Automatics they're the way to go. They really are. They sell like hotcakes. Oh yeah, I totally agree.
They're a money maker for a shop or a maker or anything. It's just I
get that phone call from Jeremiah once a week.
Yeah.
That's why he's kind of grinning.
I bet.
To be honest, Les, so I didn't hear about you until about 2-3 months. I don't know. COVID's been messing with my span on time. I'd say about 4 or 5 months, where I actually approached Jeremiah, telling him that I want to make some carbon fiber body, like full carbon fiber body automatics, because I didn't want to work with aluminum, and titanium tends to stick with the button lock mechanism. And I told him, I was like, I don't think I've seen anyone do it. Do you think it'll work? And he said, oh, there's not really anyone among you guys doing it, but there's this one guy, Les Adams, who's been doing it for a long time, and they seem to work and last the test of time. The carbon fiber doesn't really wear out. And I made one, Jared, what's it been, about 6-7 months now?
Something so it must have been in the before time. So yeah,
in the before times of COVID. So it's here at my desk, and I've probably opened this thing about 600 to 800 times.
Well, I mean, are you meaning you just made an automatic, or you try to put a safety mechanism to it?
No, it just I've purely made an automatic button lock, spring, the whole thing, no safety. I made the one prototype, custom, full on, mainly to see the durability of the carbon fiber. And it's working great. And now I only found out today. I was thinking about it, but in my prototype, I haven't implemented any sort of steel retainer rings or steel guards. It's just all steel on phosphor bronze on carbon fiber, and it's been holding up great for 6 months now.
Send me an address or something, and I'll dig up some scrap parts. A couple sides, and you'll see how the safety mechanism works. Okay.
Well, Jeremiah sent me a video today of someone was interviewing you there in USN, and you had parts on your table showing the knives taken apart. And that's when I realized you had actual stainless steel or whatever material as somewhat acting barriers, so that way it doesn't rub on the carbon fiber, which is what I was wondering about.
I'll tell you something else that I do on those knives that a lot of people don't do. I heat treat the button, and I heat treat, and a lot of people don't do this. I heat treat the pivot pin, the blade pivot pin. I mean, I don't understand why all solid, good tactical knives don't have heat treated. That's 440 in that, because that's about the only, round bar that I can get. But I heat because I mean that's the most wearing part of the whole knife, right? I mean, the blade running around
these days,
that pin.
Most of the pivots we get now are usually about 4/16, and they're hardened, but not as well as 440 would be.
Yeah, they're not hardened. You can't harden 416 like you can 440. That's for sure. I mean they are, but it's not up into the 50s. Rockwell.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm trying to get someone to make me some custom 440 pins.
Now I'll tell you something else I do on the flipper that you should pick up on. The detent ball, the ball in the spring. You understand what I'm saying, right? The detent ball in the spring is tungsten carbide. It's not a chrome ball. It's tungsten carbide. You're talking about a chrome ball against a steel blade, and I don't like that. You get that tungsten carbide ball, which is the hardest metal material basically that we have, and it just polishes a nice groove, and it never gets a flat spot on it, so that when you take that blade and you hold it after your typical liner lock, you'll be able to move that up and down. There's slop in it. Very rarely will you have that in that with a car if you drill the hole correct with a tungsten carbide ball.
Now, have you messed around with ceramic balls?
I'm sorry?
Have you messed around using ceramic detent balls?
Yeah, you don't want to do that. I hear a lot of people. That to me is a gimmick. Okay, ceramic is hard, but it's very, very brittle. Okay, very brittle. So
most of the guys in our industry, they've been using ceramic lately. I've used ceramic for 10 years. Never really had one break, except when I've actually wanted to break it.
Yeah.
I've never considered using tungsten. I didn't know if they made those in ball bearings. I'll give it a try to compare it to the ceramic. But I probably made only the first 3 knives in steel, and then I discovered the ceramic right away. But I'd assume the tungsten will be very similar and would outperform the stainless steel.
Now I don't use tungsten on the bearings. Okay, it's just too expensive to, and you don't really need to. Because it's not under the pressure that the spring is with the liner lock spring. But I use chrome balls on the bearing systems. Yeah.
Yeah, I use that. So I'll build the knives with ceramic, so that way I can put the pressure on them and not deform them to wear everything in. But once I finish the knife for final assembly, I'll switch them out for a fresh pair of chrome balls on the bearing system. I'll tell you a good little trick too for liner locks like that. If they're not opening like they really should, a lot of times it's not because you haven't designed them right. Every one of mine, because I bead blast the blades, and I bead blast the blades. One, it cuts all glare down and reflection, and it holds oil better too. But at any rate, when that bead blast runs over the tungsten carbide ball, it's rough. It's real rough, and you don't get the smoothness. It takes a long time to actually break it in. But what I do when I first open them or when I first finish them is I'll close them and I'll spray a little WD-40 on both sides of that blade where the bearings are. And I'll open and close it, and you'll see how smooth it'll get. You'll see how it'll all smooth up because you're actually wearing in a little bit of a smooth groove on the blade, and it'll really tune it up for you. It's also real good if those knives ever kind of slow down because of accumulation of stuff, whatever. Hit that with WD-40 and it'll wash it all out. That's what I tell my guys in the field to do if it ever slows down.
Yeah, flush out the pivot area there, and then it keeps it nice and clean.
Oh, sure. Yeah, keeps the rust out. I mean, it's stainless steel, but that's why they call it stainless. It just doesn't rust as much as other things do.
Right. It's not stain free, it's stain less.
Yeah.
That's a that's the nomenclature on the stainless is pretty. Gotta get that a lot from customers. It's like gotta go over that a couple times just to make sure that it's clear. It's not completely rust proof. It just doesn't stain as much.
Exactly. A lot in the heat treat too. I mean, you can have the best steel in the world. We all know this, but it's the heat treat that makes it.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, that's yeah. No, I dig it. I think the I appreciate the form and the function of these knives, and they're very direct in their purpose. So I commend you on sticking with it and not don't listen to the casuals, but sticking with what the users want. That's what's important. We get a lot of knives that are, general purpose use, which is totally fine. So it's nice to see some knives that are sort of as the way they are is as the way they will be for the people who are actually using them.
I agree. And like I said, I mean, that automatic isn't for everybody. And I didn't make it for everybody. If I did, I wouldn't have a safety in it. There wouldn't be any learning curve in it, And like I said before, there's some people that come up to the table that I won't sell it to them. I just, this knife isn't for you, buddy,
Yeah. Hey, that's all right. That's, better safe than sorry, right?
I'm just doing them a favor.
There you go. Let's see. Let me think. Is there anything that we haven't gone over that you did want to go over?
I can't think of anything. I would like to push the guild, the Knife Makers Guild. If you guys are out there listening and you're building a quality knife and you want to get in an organization that can help you develop your skills, or maybe your skills are far past that, just the camaraderie and the networking with these other members in the guild, we would love to have you. And you can find out the information that you need to begin probationary on the internet and the Knife Makers Guild website. It explains it all there, and we look forward to meeting you and getting you on board.
That is awesome. That is definitely a shout out to the Knife Makers Guild. If you've been thinking about it, give them a shout out. Look them up. I'm sure there's what's the best? Is there a website? There must be a Facebook.
Yeah, there's a Facebook also, but the website has downloading all your applications if you need to. It shows all the members, contact information, the bylaws, the dues. Everything you really need to know. Oh,
good. All right. So, guys, if you're thinking about it, go check it out. The Knife Makers Guild is definitely one of the longest running and influential organizations of our industry. A lot of famous makers are part of it now, and certainly have come and gone. So yeah, it's a pretty legit organization to be attending and to be in a probationary period with. So yeah, definitely check it out. So now, Les, and that's the other thing we kind of briefed on this before. You don't actually take orders for these knives, right? Like you make a certain amount, and that's kind of it.
I'll tell you what, I really don't sell a lot over mail order. I'll tell you why. I probably do about 100 knives a year. I do 3 or 4 shows, and at 24, I take 24 of those, 12 and 12 of those particular two to each one of those shows, and that pretty much covers it. I don't sell a whole lot to dealers. You guys, yeah. Is it okay if I put a plug in for another dealer?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
So dealers like you, and then one in particular, Julie from Arizona Custom Knives. I'm sure you know her well.
Absolutely, yep.
she's been in the business a long time, and I'll tell you what, the reason I sell to her is because she has kept. I mean, I don't really need to, the knives sell, but she has kept a lot of knife makers in business in hard times. So kudos out to her. I think she's really. I know she's bought knives when she didn't really have to, or really maybe not wanted to, but knew that knife maker, really does need the help. And when you have shops like yours and hers, that keep these guys going, that's who I'd spend my money with.
Yeah, no, that definitely, dealers, there's a place in the industry for everybody, and it's definitely, you're absolutely right that that there are some clinch hitters out there who definitely roll in when it's least expected, and that totally works. Yeah, shout out to Arizona, definitely been doing it for a while. So that's the other fun thing. Well, I don't know if it's fun. It's somewhat frustrating, but I appreciate that. So if you want some of Les's knives, you've got to try to get them. They are not an easy thing to get, so you have to travel to a show. A great reason to come to the gathering. Come to Blade Show. Once in a while, they do pop up on Arizona, but really the best place to find these is to come meet Les at a show. Is that fair?
That is fair, and again, the reason a lot of the leftovers or whatever, I do have a pretty good situation with 2 government agencies, but at the shows, the reason that I practice this business model is, you guys, you come to these shows, you spend a lot of money. These people that come to these shows, they spend a lot of money. They're just like me. You've got airfare, hotel, the whole 9 yards. And you know what? They should be rewarded for supporting us. And that's how I do it. That's as simple as that.
That works. Yeah. Come to the show, win a prize, right? And that's the opportunity to buy an awesome knife. Like
I said, I divide up the cost, and so they come to the show. And I'm sure there's a lot of other makers like that too, that show their appreciation to people that go out of their way to support them.
Right. Absolutely. Killer. Well, Les, that's I really once again I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us tonight and going over the specifics of these knives and hearing some cool stories from the from back in the day on the with some cigarette boats and some bomb squad suits, man. That was that's pretty neat. I like that. That's some good backstories for sure. And then so we'll be looking to see you at Blade Show 2021 then.
Oh yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Awesome.
Table 5L.
Oh, there we go. See? Okay. Oh, so yeah, that's right. Okay, perfect. 5L. All right. Great, man. In that case, I'm gonna start wrapping up, and I'll thank everybody for listening to another great episode of the Bladeology podcast. This has been a cool one with Les Adams. This is Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas. I'm signing off.
This is Nick Chuperin of NCC Knives, and I'm signing off.
Hamish, Washington Blade Works.
Les, I want to thank you again for coming on.
No, thank you for the opportunity to meet you guys and get to talk with you. I can't wait to see you guys again. I can't wait till Vegas comes around. We'll all go out and break bread together, and have a drink with some of the other fellas, and we'll make a good time of it.
Works for me.